Good news, everyone. Hey, everybody. This is my green giant angelfish, and if you missed it yesterday, I shot a video thinking it was going to be the final video of this fish's life. I've had this fish for about 8 years now, and I thought it was going to die yesterday, and I wasn't sure why, other than chalking it up to old age. But I did a water change just sort of out of habit, and I noticed that immediately after doing the water change, which was only about a 25% water change, I got immediate improvement in the fish's behavior. So I did another water change about 4 or 5 hours later, and I did maybe a 40% water change the second time. And once again, the fish's behavior improved dramatically. And by the time I went to bed last night, the fish had apparently fully recovered. I've been watching it all day today, and it still looks perfectly fine. We've got a little bit of redness around the base of the pectoral fins there, and I'm not really sure what's going on with that. It was a lot more red yesterday. So whatever was irritating it or causing that redness is subsiding to the point where we're not seeing nearly as much of that inflammation anymore. So what I started doing was testing the water to find out what might be causing this angelfish so much distress. And what I found out still has me scratching my head. And that is that the general hardness in the tank was up to 9 degrees. Now that may not sound like a lot for someone who's got harder water, but I've got very soft water, and even in the tanks that I condition with added minerals, they only sit around 5 or 6 degrees hardness. This tank was sitting at 9 degrees, and I don't know why. To my knowledge, I don't have anything in this tank that should affect the general hardness or the pH. I shouldn't have anything causing the pH to climb in this tank. If anything, the pH should be dropping over time. And yet, when I tested the pH in this tank yesterday, before, amending the water, the pH was bright blue. It was at least 7.8 or maybe higher. I never even bothered to test the high range. I just saw that it was off the charts on the low range test. So what is causing my water to become so hard in a general hardness sense? That's the magnesium and the calcium in the water. And what is causing my pH to raise so much, which would be carbonates in the water. Now, a rock made out of calcium carbonate would certainly do the trick, but I don't think I have any rocks in this tank that are made out of calcium carbonate. We can't really see most of them at the moment, so I'm not going to bother panning around on the bottom of the tank. I may have put a pouch of crushed coral and oyster shells in the canister filter for the purposes of adding some minerals. I do this in some of my tanks, and I may have done it in this tank and forgotten about it. And over time, I have been sort of neglecting this tank. I've been planning on getting in here and doing some work. My regular viewers will know I've been talking about it forever. You can see how messy and how much cyanobacteria is in there. And so I'm terrible with keeping track of time and staying on top of things. So for me to take a tank and say, oh, I'm just going to put this off, that's potentially really bad news for me. And I think that's what happened. I think I've just got so lax on my maintenance that the water hardness crept up, the pH crept up, and it just became unsustainable for this fish that, needs fairly soft water and, close to neutral pH. It could tolerate 7.6, no problem. But again, my pH was getting up there. It might even have been over 8. And the general hardness was all the way up to 9 degrees general hardness. Now, I tested the nitrate. For those of you that are interested, I don't believe the nitrate had anything, or at least not much, to do with it. The nitrate does contribute to what is known as permanent hardness, and that does affect the fish's osmoregulation. So, typically when a soft water fish is struggling in harder water, it's because of osmoregulation purposes or reasons. And if you've got a lot of nitrate in the water that's going to add to the total dissolved solids, the hardness of the water, as it were, that could contribute to it. The nitrates themselves are inert, so it's not like there was any kind of toxicity going on. I didn't have levels that high. But after a series of medium-sized water changes, I did another one today of about 25%, We've got the nitrate level down to where we're just sitting at orange, orange to red. We're right around that 40 parts per million sort of arbitrary magic number after a series of 3 medium-sized water changes. So, how much did we start with? I don't know. It was definitely over 100 parts per million. There's no question about that. But it wasn't through the roof. It wasn't hundreds and hundreds of parts per million or anything. So I don't think the nitrate is what was causing the fish to behave the way it was, especially since it was all the way till today before I brought it down to what would typically be thought of as more reasonable numbers. But after my first 2 water changes, I brought the general hardness down to 4 degrees. And I brought the pH down last night all the way to about 6.8. I brought it all the way down to being acidic water last night, and the fish looked great. And so today when I checked again, the general hardness had crept back up to 5, and the pH was back up to about 7.2 overnight. So something in this tank is adding calcium carbonate. And I'm not going to check into it today. I don't have time, but the next time we do some maintenance on this tank, we're going to get in there and really do some maintenance on this tank. I'm going to investigate those rocks a little bit further, and I am going to look inside the filter and find out if I've got any calcium carbonate sources in the filter that would be causing the pH and the general hardness to climb so fast in this tank. I really don't know why it's doing it, but I think that's what's affecting the angelfish there. So as long as I stay on top of my maintenance like I've done for the last 8 years, then we'll be fine. It's not like this is an issue. It's only become an issue recently since I've become lax on my maintenance. So once again, let that be a lesson to us. Do your water changes, stay on top of your maintenance. They can get away from you and you can have some, fairly negative consequences. So I'm happy to say we got on top of this one fast enough that has apparently made a full recovery. But cross your fingers, I really kind of don't feel like we're out of the woods just yet. I'm hoping we might get a spawn out of these diamond tetras with all these recent water changes and hardness drops and pH drops. Those are all the types of things that can trigger spawning in fish like this. So hopefully we'll get some diamond tetra fry in the tank here pretty soon. All right, everybody, that's my video for today. Make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you real soon in the next one.